The cold bit through Daehyun's suit as he pushed the waste cart across the frozen ground. Another night. Another shift. The same routine he had followed for 2 years, on this miserable moon. He was a janitor at the Talvis 9 research outpost, the kind of person everyone looked through instead of at. The base sat like a metal bubble on an endless sheet of ice. Inside, scientists studied the local wildlife. Outside, Daehyun cleaned up their mess. He took out the trash. He mopped the floors. He fixed broken equipment when maintenance was too busy. Nobody thanked him. Nobody remembered his name, except when something needed cleaning. It was 3 in the morning by Earth time. The base was quiet. Most of the crew slept in their warm bunks. Only Daehyun walked the cold hallways, pushing his cart, emptying bins, his footsteps echoing in the silence. This was his world now. Small, forgotten, safe. He hadn't always been a janitor. Once, he had been a medic in the Colonial Defense Force. Once, he had saved lives. But that was before the accident. Before the transport crash that killed everyone in his unit except him. Before the nightmares. Before he ran away to the furthest, quietest corner of human space he could find. Daehyun pushed those thoughts away as he wheeled his cart toward the exterior airlock. The biological waste had to be dumped outside, away from the base. Protocol demanded it. He had done this same task 1,000 times before. He cycled through the airlock and stepped into the night. Twin moons hung in the purple sky. The wind howled across the ice. His helmet light cut through the darkness as he dragged the waste container toward the disposal site near the perimeter fence. That was when he saw it. A shape lay crumpled against the fence, small, furry, not moving. Daehyun stopped. His breath fogged inside his helmet. He knew what it was. The scientists called them Vorshai. They were the apex predators of this frozen moon. Wolf-like creatures as big as bears, with fur that looked like crystal and glowed with soft light. Beautiful. Deadly. Absolutely forbidden to approach. But this one was tiny. A cub. Maybe 30 kilograms. Its crystalline fur should have glowed blue and white. Instead, it barely flickered. The creature was dying. Daehyun stood there for a long moment. Protocol said to report it. Protocol said never to interact with native species. Protocol said to walk away. The longer send of Separative discerned. Daehyun stood there. Daehyun stood there for a long moment. For marking anti-first. Protocol said to walk away. He had always followed protocol. Protocol kept him safe. Protocol meant no trouble. Protocol was why he chose this quiet, boring job, where nothing ever happened, and nobody asked questions. The cub's side moved slightly. Still breathing. Barely. Daehyun remembered being a medic. He remembered the oath he took. First, do no harm. Reduce suffering where you can. Save what can be saved. He remembered believing those words mattered. Stupid, he muttered to himself. This is so stupid. But he was already moving. He dumped the waste container quickly and hurried back to the airlock. His mind raced. What did these creatures eat? The scientists studied them. He had seen their reports in the common room. Carnivores, pack hunters. They ate the snow hares and ice seals that lived in the valleys. Daehyun reached the mess hall. His own dinner sat uneaten in his locker. He had been too tired to eat. 3 protein bars, a packet of synthesized beef. An apple he had been saving. He grabbed all of it. Back through the airlock. Back into the cold. The cub hadn't moved. Daehyun approached slowly. The fence separated them. Good, safer that way. The protein bars with their wrappers torn off. He kept the apple. These were carnivores. The cub's eye opened. Just one. It was large and golden, like liquid honey. It looked at him. Daehyun saw intelligence there. Not human intelligence, but something. Awareness. Understanding. I know what it's like, Daehyun said quietly. His voice sounded strange in his helmet. To be left behind. To be forgotten. I know. Dae-hyun 7th. I know. The cub blinked slowly. Its nose twitched. It smelled the food. Dae-hyun backed away. He picked up his waste container and walked back to the base. He didn't look back. But he knew. He knew the cub would eat. Or it wouldn't. Either way, he had broken the rules. Either way, he had done what he thought was right for the first time in 2 years. Inside the base, he finished his shift. He mopped floors. He cleaned the bathrooms. He restocked supplies. The same routine. But something felt different. Something had changed. When his shift ended at dawn, Dae-hyun didn't go straight to his quarters. He went to the observation deck. Through the thick windows, he could see the perimeter fence. The cub was gone. The food was gone too. Only tracks in the snow remained. What are you looking at? Dae-hyun turned. Dr. Hyori Choi stood behind him, holding a coffee. She was one of the junior researchers. Young. Smart. One of the few people who ever said good morning to him. Nothing, Dae-hyun said. Just watching the sunrise. Hyori moved beside him. She looked out at the ice fields. It's beautiful here. Lonely, but beautiful. Yeah. Dae-hyun agreed. Did you hear? Hyori said. Dr. Park's team found evidence that Vorshai packs abandon weak cubs. They think it's natural selection. Only the strong survive to adulthood. Dae-hyun said nothing. Sad though, Hyori continued. The abandoned ones usually die within a few days. Starvation or predators. The researchers want to study one, but they can never get close enough. Maybe that's good, Dae-hyun said. Maybe they should be left alone. Hyori looked at him curiously. You sound like you care about them. I care about anything that suffers, Dae-hyun said. Doesn't everyone? Hyori smiled sadly. You'd be surprised. Most people here see them as research subjects. Data points. Not as living things that feel pain. Dae-hyun thought about the golden eye looking at him through the darkness. The intelligence he saw there. The trust. I should sleep, he said. Long shift. Of course. Rest well, Dae-hyun. He walked to his quarters. Small room. Single bed. A locker for his clothes. A desk with nothing on it. This was his life. This was what he chose. Safe. Quiet. Alone. But as he lay down to sleep, Dae-hyun thought about the cub. Was it still alive? Would it survive? Would it come back? He told himself he wouldn't go to the fence again. Too risky. Someone might see. He could lose his job. Worse, he could contaminate some important research. The scientists would be furious. But deep down, Dae-hyun knew the truth. He was already planning it. Tomorrow night, during his shift, he would bring more food. Not because of protocol. Not because it was his job, but because, for the first time in 2 years, something needed him. Something depended on him. And maybe, just maybe, that was the difference between existing and living. Outside his window, the sun rose over the ice. The day crew began to wake. The base came alive with voices and footsteps, but Dae-hyun closed his eyes and saw only that golden eye in the darkness. Watching him, trusting him, he slept. And for once, he didn't dream of the accident. 3 nights had passed since Dae-hyun first saw the cub. 3 nights of sneaking food to the fence. 3 nights of breaking the rules. He told himself he would stop. Every morning, when his shift ended, he promised himself that tonight would be different. Tonight he would follow protocol. Tonight he would do his job, and nothing more. But when midnight came and the base fell quiet, Dae-hyun always found himself at the mess hall, always packing food into his pockets, always heading to that same spot near the fence. And the cub was always waiting. It looked better now. Stronger. Its crystalline fur glowed brighter, the blue and white bioluminescence pulsing with life. It no longer lay, collapsed against the fence. Now it sat up, alert, watching the airlock door as if it knew exactly when Dae-hyun would appear. On the fourth night, Dae-hyun pushed a piece of synthesized meat through the fence gap. The cub took it gently from his gloved hand. Its teeth were sharp, but careful. It could have bitten him. It chose not to. "You're smart, aren't you?" Dae-hyun whispered. "Smarter than they think." The cub tilted its head, those golden eyes studying him. Then, it made a sound. Not a growl. Something softer. Almost like a chirp. A greeting. Dae-hyun smiled. He hadn't smiled in months. Maybe years. But here, in the freezing darkness with this alien creature, he felt something warm in his chest. Connection. Purpose. The feeling that he mattered to someone, even if that someone had 4 legs and crystal fur. The next morning, Dae-hyun was restocking the supply closet when Hyeri appeared in the doorway. She watched him for a moment. Her expression, thoughtful. "Can I ask you something?" she said. Dae-hyun's heart jumped. "Sure. Why have you been taking extra food from the mess hall?" His hands froze on the supply box. "What? I'm not accusing you of anything," Hyeri said quickly. "I just noticed. Every night for the past week, you've been packing food. More than one person could eat. I'm just curious." Dae-hyun's mind raced. He could lie. He should lie. But looking at Hyeri's open, honest face, he found he didn't want to. "I found a Vorshai cub," he admitted quietly. Hyeri's eyes widened. "You've been feeding it?" Dae-hyun. "That's against every protocol we have." "I know. You could lose your job." "I know. The research team would be furious. Dr. Park would have you removed from the base." "I know," Dae-hyun said. "But I couldn't watch it die. I just couldn't." Hyeri was quiet for a long moment. Then she surprised him. "What does it look like now? Is it healthy?" "You're not going to report me?" "I should," Hyeri said. "But I became a scientist because I love living things. All living things. I understand why you did it." She paused. "Can I see it? Tonight?" Dae-hyun hesitated. Showing her meant sharing his secret. It meant trusting someone. He hadn't trusted anyone in a long time. "Okay," he finally said. "Tonight. During my shift." That night, Hyeri met him at the airlock. She wore a full environmental suit like his. They cycled through together and walked to the fence. The cub was already there, waiting. "Oh," Hyeri breathed. "Oh, it's beautiful." The cub watched them both. It seemed uncertain about this new person. But when Dae-hyun held out food, it approached slowly and took it. "Look at its markings," Hyeri said. "I've never seen them this bright on a young one. It's thriving." She turned to Dae-hyun. "Do you know what this means? The theory says Vorshai abandon weak cubs. But you proved a supposedly weak cub can survive and grow strong with proper nutrition. This challenges everything Dr. Park believes." "I'm not trying to challenge anyone," Dae-hyun said. "I just didn't want it to die. That's what makes it important," Hyeri said. "You acted from compassion, not curiosity. You saw a living being in pain and helped. That's what we should all do." They stayed for 20 minutes, watching the cub eat. Then, they headed back to the base. Hyeri promised to keep his secret. Dae-hyun believed her. But secrets have a way of growing. The next night was the 6th night. Dae-hyun approached the fence as usual. The cub was there, but something was different. It seemed nervous. It kept looking behind itself into the darkness, beyond Dae-hyun's light. "What's wrong?" Dae-hyun asked. Then he saw them. Eyes in the darkness. Not one pair, 3 pairs, glowing like diamonds in his helmet light. Large. Much larger than the cub. Adult Vorshai. Dae-hyun's blood turned to ice. He stood perfectly still. The adult stood about 10 meters behind the cub, barely visible in the swirling snow. They were massive, easily 3 meters tall at the shoulder. Their crystalline fur rippled with bioluminescent patterns, beautiful and terrifying. The cub looked back at them, then at Dae-hyun. It chirped softly. The largest of the 3 adults stepped forward. A female, Dae-hyun thought. The pack leader. Her eyes fixed on him with laser focus. She moved with liquid grace, powerful muscles sliding under her crystal fur. She could cover the distance between them in seconds. The fence wouldn't stop her if she wanted through. Dae-hyun couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. This was it. This was how he died. Killed by an alien predator. Because he couldn't follow simple rules. But the alpha didn't attack. She moved to the cub's side. She sniffed it carefully, examining it. The cub pushed against her, making happy sounds. The alpha rumbled deep in her chest. Then she looked at Dae-hyun again. For a long moment, human and alien stared at each other. Dae-hyun saw intelligence in those diamond eyes. Not human intelligence, but something equally complex. She was thinking, evaluating, making decisions. Then the alpha did something that made Dae-hyun's breath catch in his throat. She turned away. She moved back into the darkness. And when she returned, she carried something in her jaws. A snow hare. Freshly killed. Still warm. The alpha approached the fence. She dropped the hare on her side of the barrier, directly across from where Dae-hyun had placed food for the cub. Then, she backed away. The message was clear. A gift for a gift. Food for food. Reciprocity. You understand, Dae-hyun whispered. You understand what I did. You're thanking me. The alpha watched him for another moment. Then she turned and walked back into the darkness. The other 2 adults followed. The cub stayed at the fence, looking between Dae-hyun and its pack. Go on, Dae-hyun said softly. Go with your family. You're strong now. You'll survive. Dae-hyun. 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 The cub chirped once more. Then it bounded after the adults, disappearing into the night. Dae-hyun stood alone in the snow. His heart pounded. His hands shook. He looked down at the snow hare on the other side of the fence. Physical proof that what just happened was real. The Vorshai weren't simple predators. They understood abstract concepts like debt and gratitude. They could recognize kindness across species barriers. They were far more intelligent than anyone knew. And Dae-hyun had just made first contact. He picked up his waste container and walked back to the base in a daze. His mind spun with implications. Should he report this? Should he tell someone? Who would believe him? Inside, he found Hyeri waiting in the observation deck. I saw it on the external cameras, she said. Her voice shook with excitement. The adults. The gift exchange. Dae-hyun. Do you understand what you've discovered? That they're smarter than we thought, he said. Much smarter. This is unprecedented. Reciprocal altruism across species barriers. Symbolic exchange. These aren't just intelligent animals. They might be sapient. They might be people. Dae-hyun thought about that. People. The word felt right. He had looked into the alpha's eyes and seen a person looking back. What do we do? He asked. Hyeri bit her lip. If we report this, they'll take over. Dr. Park. Commander Vosh. They'll turn this into a research project. They'll try to study the pack, control them, test them. And if we don't report it, then we wait, Hyeri said. We watch. We let them make the next move. They know where you are now. They know humans can show kindness. Let's see what they do with that knowledge. End quote. Dae-hyun nodded. It felt right. Don't force it. Don't control it. Just let it happen naturally. But as he walked to his quarters that morning, he couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. The quiet life he built, the safe routine he hid behind all of it was crumbling. And somehow, he didn't mind. Dae-hyun woke to pounding on his door. His room's clock showed 9 a.m. He had been asleep for less than 2 hours. "Kim, open this door now." He recognized Commander Vosh's voice. His stomach dropped. Dae-hyun opened the door. Commander Vosh stood there in full uniform, his alien features drawn tight with anger. Vosh was Turian, tall and rigid, with the kind of face that never smiled. Behind him stood 2 security officers. "Get dressed," Vosh said. 10 minutes later, Dae-hyun sat in the commander's office. Vosh stood behind his desk. Dr. Ji-won Park sat in the corner, her arms crossed, her expression furious. Security footage played on the wall screen. It showed Dae-hyun at the fence, showed him feeding the cub, showed the adult Vorshai appearing, showed the gift exchange. 6 days, Vosh said. For 6 days, you violated protocol. You interacted with native species without authorization. You contaminated an active research site. You put this entire base at risk. "I saved a life," Dae-hyun said quietly. "You had no authority to make that decision." Ji-won Park stood up, her voice shaking with anger. "Do you have any idea what you've done? I have spent 2 years establishing baseline behavioral data on Vorshai packs. 2 years of careful observation, and you've introduced an artificial variable that makes all of my research worthless." "Your research said the cub would die anyway," Dae-hyun said. "Your research said the pack abandons weak members. Natural selection. Survival of the fittest. Remember? That's not the point. Then what is the point?" Dae-hyun felt his own anger rising. "That you care more about your data than about a living creature suffering? That science matters more than compassion? This isn't about compassion," Park shot back. "This is about protocol. About rules that exist for good reasons. You're a janitor. You don't get to make these decisions." The word stung. Janitor. Said like an insult. Like he was less than human because he cleaned floors instead of writing research papers. "I'm a human being," Dae-hyun said. "And I made a human choice. To help instead of watch something die." "Enough," Commander Vosh said. "Kim Dae-hyun, you are suspended from duty pending investigation. You're confined to quarters until I decide what to do with you." Dismissed. Security escorted Dae-hyun back to his room. The door locked behind him. He sat on his bed and put his head in his hands. He'd known this could happen. He'd known the risks, but knowing didn't make it easier. Hours passed. Dae-hyun stared at his walls. He thought about the cub. Was it safe now? Would the pack take care of it? Or had he made everything worse by interfering? A soft knock came at his door. It opened slightly. Hyeri slipped inside before security could stop her. "You shouldn't be here," Dae-hyun said. "Probably not," Hyeri agreed. She sat beside him. "I reviewed all the footage. Not just your interactions. Everything our cameras caught last night. And the Vorshai pack has grown. 3 adults became 7. They're circling the base perimeter. They're not attacking. They're not threatening. They're just watching. Waiting." "Waiting for what?" "I think they're waiting for you," Hyeri said. She pulled out her tablet and showed him thermal images. 7 large shapes moving around the base's outer fence. "I showed this to Dr. Park. Tried to explain what it means. The pack coordination. The gift-giving behavior. The fact that they're demonstrating protective behavior toward the base now. Not predatory." "What did she say?" "She said the implications are irrelevant. That protocol exists for reasons, and you broke it." But I could see it in her eyes. Dae-hyun. She knows this is important. She's just too proud to admit she was wrong about their intelligence level. Dae-hyun looked at the thermal images. 7 Vorshai. He recognized the cub's smaller shape sitting at the fence line, right where he used to meet it. "There's something else," Hyeri said. "A storm front is coming. The Decade Storm. Weather Service says it'll hit in about 12 hours. Temperature will drop to -100 degrees Celsius. Wind speeds over 200 kilometers per hour. Nothing survives outside during a decade storm, not even Vorshai. What does the pack do during these storms? They have dens, cave systems in the mountains about 50 kilometers from here. They should be heading there now. But they're not. They're here. Daehyun understood. They're waiting for me. They don't know I can't come out. They don't know I'm locked in here. Commander Vosh has ordered a full facility lockdown. All external hatches will be sealed before the storm hits. Nothing goes in or out. Daehyun looked at the thermal image of the cub. Sitting alone at the fence. Exposed. Loyal to something it didn't fully understand. Trust. The human who fed it would come. The human always came. And Daehyun would be locked inside, while that trust killed them all. I have to get out there, he said. You're confined to quarters. Security is watching your door. Then I'll override the lock. They'll know. The system logs everything. I don't care, Daehyun said. I can't let them die because of me. Because they trusted me. Hyeri looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. Okay. But you'll need help. You can't open the loading bay alone. The override requires 2 command codes. You'd risk your career for this? You risked yours to save 1 cub, Hyeri said. I can risk mine to save 8 Vorshai. She stood. The storm hits at 9 p.m. Lockdown starts at 8:30. That gives us a 30-minute window. Be ready. She left. Daehyun sat in his locked room and watched the clock. Outside his small window, the sky was already darkening. The wind picked up. The storm was coming. At 8:15 p.m., Daehyun's door lock clicked open. He didn't question it. He just moved. He grabbed his environmental suit and ran. The hallways were empty. Everyone was securing the base for lockdown. Daehyun reached the loading bay and found Hyeri already there. She'd accessed the control panel. Once we do this, there's no taking it back, she said. I know. We could both be arrested, sent to prison. I know, Daehyun said. But I'd rather be arrested than live knowing I let them die because I was too afraid to break more rules. Hyeri smiled. Dr. Park was wrong about you. You're not just a janitor. You're someone who sees living beings instead of research subjects. The galaxy needs more people, like you. Together, they entered their override codes. Alarms shrieked immediately. The loading bay's external door began to open. Wind and snow blasted inside. The temperature dropped 30 degrees in seconds. Through the opening, Daehyun saw them. 8 Vorshai huddled against the storm. The cub in the center. The adults forming a protective circle around it, their crystal fur pressed together to create a shield against the wind. Their bioluminescent markings were dimming. They were dying. Come on! Daehyun shouted into the wind. Come inside! The alpha's head lifted. She saw the opening. Saw Daehyun. Understanding flashed in her eyes. She grabbed the cub by the scruff of its neck and dragged it toward the base. The pack followed. What the hell is going on? Commander Vosh's voice boomed over the intercom. Who opened that bay? Security teams arrived, weapons drawn. The Vorshai pack entered the loading bay and immediately formed a defensive position. Cornered predators. Armed humans. The worst possible situation. Daehyun stepped between them. Lower your weapons. They're not hostile. Step aside, Kim. Vosh appeared, his face purple with rage. No, Daehyun said. They came here because they trusted me, because I showed them kindness. I won't let you shoot them for that. For 30 seconds, nobody moved. The alpha growled. Her eyes fixed on the weapons. The cub whimpered. Fingers hovered over triggers. Then Hyeri walked forward, her hands raised. She carried a thermal blanket and moved slowly toward the cub. The pack tensed, but didn't attack. She wrapped the blanket around the tiny Vorshai. Lower your weapons, Hyeri said quietly. We're scientists. We study life. We don't murder it because it's inconvenient. Jiwon Park arrived last. She stood in the doorway, taking in the scene. 8 massive predators. 2 humans protecting them. Security ready to fire. The moment stretched. Finally, Park looked at Commander Vosh and nodded. "Stand down," Vosh ordered. Weapons lowered. The Vorshai pack relaxed slightly. Outside, the storm hit with full fury. The loading bay door sealed shut. Inside, an uneasy peace settled over humans and aliens alike. Dae-hyun sat on the floor, his back against a crate. Then, to everyone's shock, she lowered her massive head and rested it near his shoulder. The cub crawled into his lap and closed its eyes. The other adults settled around them in a protective circle. Commander Vosh watched this with an unreadable expression. "We'll discuss your punishment after the storm," he said to Dae-hyun. Then, he left. But Ji-won Park stayed. She studied the scene with scientific fascination. "Remarkable," she whispered. "They're demonstrating trust behavior. Pack acceptance of an outside species member. This changes everything." The storm raged for 18 hours. Dae-hyun didn't sleep. He sat among the Vorshai through the entire night. No longer a janitor, but something new. A bridge. A connection between 2 worlds. And when dawn finally came, he knew nothing would ever be the same again. The storm's howl filled the loading bay like a living thing. Wind hammered the sealed doors. Snow piled against the windows. Outside, the temperature had dropped to levels that would freeze exposed skin in seconds. Inside, warmth battled cold at the threshold where human territory met nature's fury. Dae-hyun sat very still. The Alpha Vorshai's head rested near his leg. The cub slept in his lap, its body warm and surprisingly heavy. Around them, the 7 adult pack members formed a loose circle. They were alert, but calm. Their bioluminescent markings had brightened again in the base's warmth, casting blue-white light across the floor. Scientists began to gather at the loading bay's inner door. They kept their distance, but Dae-hyun could see them talking, pointing, recording everything on their tablets. He was an exhibit now, a curiosity. The janitor who befriended the unbefriendable. Dr. Ji-won Park entered with a medical scanner. She moved slowly, her hands visible. The adult Vorshai watched her, but didn't growl. She approached the cub carefully. "May I?" she asked Dae-hyun. "Ask them, not me," he replied. Park looked at the Alpha. The large female studied her for a long moment. Then, incredibly, the Alpha's ears relaxed slightly. Not quite permission, but not refusal either. Park scanned the cub. Her eyes widened at the readings. Healthy. All vital signs strong. Bone density excellent. She looked at Dae-hyun. "You saved its life. When I first saw the data on this cub 3 weeks ago, I gave it less than 48 hours to live." "Your data was wrong," Dae-hyun said quietly. "My interpretation was wrong," Park corrected. She sat back on her heels. "I assumed the pack abandoned it because it was weak. Genetic culling. But what if they left it because they couldn't feed it? What if the hunting was bad that week? What if they made a choice to save the many over the one? Planning to return when conditions improved. You're saying they didn't abandon it. They were coming back, and you fed it in the meantime. You became part of their pack structure without realizing it. You filled the role of provider." Park gestured to the adults around them. "Look at their behavior. They're not guarding against you. They're guarding with you. You're part of their family unit now." Hyeri appeared with food. Real meat from the base's protein stores, not the synthesized stuff. She placed it at the edge of the Vorshai circle. The adults looked to the Alpha. The Alpha looked at Hyeri, then at the food. She huffed softly and lowered her head. The other adults began to eat. "They're accepting food from other humans now," Hyeri observed. "The trust is spreading." Commander Vosh arrived with 2 security officers. They stayed well back. Vosh studied the scene with hard eyes. I've been in contact with Interspecies Command, he said. They're reviewing the footage. The protocol violation is serious, Kim. But the implications of what you've accomplished. He trailed off. What happens to me? Daehyun asked. That depends. Command wants a full report. They want to know if this contact can be replicated. If we can establish formal relations with the Vorshai. Vosh paused. They want to know if you can teach others to do what you did. I didn't do anything special. I just fed a hungry cub. You did something humans do better than any other species in the galaxy, Park interjected. She had moved to stand beside Vosh. You looked at something alien and saw a person, not a subject, not data, a living being worthy of compassion. That's a gift, Daehyun. One we should have valued more. The storm raged on. Hours passed. Daehyun dozed, sitting up, exhausted. The cub shifted in his lap but didn't wake. The alpha remained beside him like a guardian. Scientists rotated through, observing. Someone brought Daehyun food. Someone else brought water. Slowly, grudgingly. He realized they were taking care of him now. The invisible janitor had become visible. Around hour 10, the cub woke. It looked at Daehyun with those golden eyes, and chirped. Hungry. Daehyun looked around helplessly. The alpha stood. She walked to where the humans had placed food, and selected a large piece of meat. She carried it back, and dropped it in front of the cub. The young one ate eagerly. She's teaching it, Hyeri whispered. She was recording everything. Teaching it that humans provide food. That we're safe. This knowledge will pass to the next generation. One act of kindness, Park murmured. That's all it took. One human refusing to let something die alone. Daehyun thought about his old life. The transport crash. His unit dying around him. The guilt that made him run to this frozen moon to hide. He had spent 2 years trying to become invisible. Trying to not matter. Trying to not be responsible for anyone ever again. But life didn't work that way. You couldn't stop caring just because caring hurt. You couldn't stop being human just because being human meant feeling pain. The storm began to weaken around hour 15. The howling decreased. The hammering stopped. By hour 18, only strong wind remained. The decade storm was passing. Commander Vosh returned. We'll open the bay in 1 hour. The pack needs to leave before we resume normal operations. Will they go? Hyeri asked. I don't know, Daehyun admitted. We should give them the choice. When the bay door opened, cold air rushed in, but the killing wind was gone. The sky showed patches of purple between the clouds. The storm had passed. The alpha stood immediately. She huffed at the pack. They assembled, ready to leave. But the cub looked uncertain. It looked at Daehyun, then at the alpha, then back. The alpha approached Daehyun one more time. She pressed her massive head against his chest, nearly knocking him over. He felt the warmth of her breath, smelled the wild scent of her fur. Then she turned to the cub and growled softly. The cub chirped and followed. The whole pack moved toward the exit. One by one, they filed out into the snow. But at the threshold, the alpha stopped. She looked back at Daehyun. Their eyes met. In that moment, Daehyun understood. This wasn't goodbye. This was, see you later. The pack would return. The bond they'd formed wouldn't break just because the storm ended. The alpha bounded into the snow. The pack followed. Within moments, they vanished into the landscape. Daehyun stood in the open bay door, watching them go. His chest felt tight. Not with sadness, but with something else. Something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. What now? He asked without turning around. Commander Vosh stepped beside him. Now we wait for Command's decision. But between you and me, Kim, you're not going to be a janitor much longer. What will I be? That's up to Command. But if I had to guess, the first human Vorshai liaison officer. Vosh almost smiled. Congratulations. You've just changed your life. Dae-hyun looked out at the ice fields. Somewhere out there, the pack was heading home. The cub was safe. It would grow strong. It would remember the human who helped it when no one else would. And maybe, just maybe, that memory would change the future for both their species. Behind him, scientists chattered excitedly. They were already planning new research protocols, new observation methods, new ways to study the Vorshai without harming them. Park was arguing with Vosh about resource allocation. Hyrie was reviewing footage and taking notes. Everything was changing. The quiet, safe, invisible life Dae-hyun built was gone. He had broken it himself when he chose to feed one starving cub. But as he stood there, in the cold, watching the place where the pack disappeared, Dae-hyun realized something important. He wasn't afraid. He wasn't running. For the first time since the accident, he was moving forward instead of hiding. The cub had saved him just as much as he'd saved it. They'd rescued each other from their separate kinds of death. And now, both of them had a chance to live. The bay door closed. The base returned to normal operations. But nothing was truly normal anymore. Everyone looked at Dae-hyun differently now. They saw him. They acknowledged him. He mattered. He went to his quarters and collapsed on his bed. Exhausted. Overwhelmed. Changed. And when he finally slept, he didn't dream of the accident. He dreamed of crystal fur, glowing blue and white in the darkness. Of golden eyes, full of intelligence and trust. Of a future where humans and Vorshai might walk side by side under alien stars. He dreamed of hope. And hope, he remembered, was a powerful thing. Hope could change everything. The investigation took 3 days. Dae-hyun sat through interviews with interspecies command representatives. He answered the same questions over and over. Why did you feed the cub? Why did you break protocol? Endwine. What did you think would happen? His answers never changed. Because it was dying. Because it was right. I didn't think. I just acted. On the 4th day, Commander Vosh summoned him to the office. Dae-hyun expected punishment. Deportation. Maybe jail time. Instead, he found Dr. Ji-won Park sitting in the commander's chair. Sit, she said. Her voice was different. Softer. Dae-hyun sat. I owe you an apology, Park began. When I called you just a janitor, I was wrong. Your job title doesn't define your worth. Your actions do. And your actions showed more wisdom than 2 years of my research. I don't understand. The Interspecies Command reviewed everything. The footage. The behavior analysis. My research data. They concluded that we've been studying the Vorshai completely wrong. We treated them like smart animals. But they're not. They're people. A non-human sapient species. And you proved it by doing the one thing we scientists forgot to try. What's that? Kindness, Park said simply. You offered kindness without expecting anything back. And they understood. They reciprocated. That's not animal behavior. That's sapient behavior. Ethical reasoning. Abstract thinking. Commander Vosh entered. Kim Dae-hyun, you're officially reassigned. Your new position is Xenobiology Liaison Specialist. Your job is to continue building the relationship with the Vorshai pack. We need to understand them better, and they've chosen you as their contact point. Dae-hyun's mouth opened, but no words came out. The pay is considerably better than janitorial work, Vosh added, and you'll work directly with Dr. Park and Dr. Choi. Congratulations. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Hyrie said from the doorway. She grinned. Say yes, so we can get started. There's so much to learn. Dae-hyun said yes. The next 3 weeks transformed his life. He trained with the xenobiology team. He learned about Vorshai biology, pack dynamics, communication methods, He studied other examples of human-alien contact throughout the galaxy. And every night, he went to the fence. The pack returned. Not every night, but often. The cub, now visibly larger and stronger, always led them. The alpha always stayed close. They accepted food from Daehyun, Hyeri, and eventually from Park too. Slowly, carefully, trust expanded. On week 4, Daehyun proposed something radical. I want to go outside the fence. Meet them on their territory. Absolutely not, Vosh said immediately. It's the next step, Daehyun argued. The fence creates a barrier. If we want real communication, real understanding, I need to meet them as equals. Not through metal bars. They could kill you. They could have killed me a dozen times already. They chose not to. I trust them. Park considered this. If you're serious, we do it properly. Full environmental suit. Tracking beacon. Emergency response team on standby. And I'm coming with you. Daehyun agreed. 3 days later, on a clear morning with good weather, Daehyun and Park walked through the base's main gate. Security teams watched from the walls. Medical teams stood ready. Everyone held their breath. The pack was waiting 50 meters from the base. All 8 of them. The alpha stood at the front, the cub at her side. Daehyun walked forward slowly. His heart hammered. This was different. No fence between them. No barrier. Just human and Vorshai. Face to face, in the open. 10 meters away, he stopped. The alpha studied him. Then she walked forward. She was massive up close, easily twice his height. Her crystal fur rippled with bioluminescent light. Her eyes held intelligence that made his breath catch. She circled him once, sniffing, examining. Then, she did something that made Park gasp behind him. The alpha lowered herself to the ground, pressing her body into the snow. A submissive posture. Not fear. Respect. Daehyun understood. She was showing him that despite her size and strength, she recognized his importance. She was honoring the bond between them. He knelt too, brought himself down to her level. They looked at each other, human and alien, equals meeting for the first time without barriers. The cub bounded forward. It jumped on Daehyun, nearly knocking him over. It chirped excitedly, pressing its head against his chest. Daehyun laughed. Real laughter. How long had it been since he laughed? The other pack members approached. They sniffed him. They examined Park, who stood very still, letting them investigate. One by one, they accepted both humans into their space. This is remarkable, Park whispered. They're including us in pack bonding behavior. Do you know what this means? We're friends? Daehyun suggested. More than that, we're family. In their eyes, we're pack. They stayed for 2 hours. They documented behavior. They observed communication patterns. They simply existed alongside the Vorshai, sharing space, sharing time, building understanding. When they returned to base, everyone celebrated. The first successful contact on equal terms. The beginning of something new. But the real test came 3 weeks later. Daehyun and Hyeri were conducting field research, tracking Vorshai migration patterns in the northern ice fields. Their transport vehicle broke down 40 kilometers from base. The communication system failed. They were stranded. Emergency beacon is working, Hyeri said, but rescue won't arrive until morning. That's 8 hours. Temperature is dropping. Daehyun checked his suit readings. We'll survive, but it'll be close. They huddled in the broken transport, rationing heat. Hours passed. The cold crept in. Daehyun felt drowsiness taking hold. Hypothermia's first sign. Beside him, Hyeri shivered uncontrollably. Tell me about your family, she said through chattering teeth. Keep talking. Stay awake. Daehyun told her about his parents back on Earth, his sister who became a teacher, his nieces he'd never met because he was hiding on this frozen moon. He talked until his voice grew weak. That's when he heard it. A sound outside the transport. Huffing. Scratching. What is that? Hyeri whispered. Dae-hyun looked through the cracked window. His heart jumped. Crystalline fur. Glowing eyes. The pack. It's them, he said. The Vorshai. They found us. He opened the transport door. Cold air blasted in. 8 Vorshai stood in the darkness, the alpha at the front. The cub, now adolescent-sized, beside her. The alpha approached. She dropped something at Dae-hyun's feet. A snow hare. Fresh kill. Food. They brought us food, Dae-hyun said, amazed. Then, the pack did something even more incredible. They circled the transport. They pressed their bodies against the vehicle's walls. Their fur, designed to retain heat in brutal cold, created insulation. The temperature inside began to rise. The cub squeezed through the door and pressed against Dae-hyun and Hyeri. Its body heat warmed them both. The cub's purring rumble vibrated through their suits. They're protecting us, Hyeri whispered. Just like we protected them during the storm. They remember. All through the night, the Vorshai pack maintained their vigil. They kept Dae-hyun and Hyeri warm. They brought food. They stood guard against the cold. When rescue arrived at dawn, the search team found something unprecedented. 2 humans, sleeping peacefully in a broken transport, surrounded by 8 alien predators acting as guardians. The footage went viral across human space within days. News services picked it up. Scientific journals demanded papers. Diplomatic corps sent representatives. Everyone wanted to know about the janitor who befriended the aliens. But Dae-hyun avoided most of the attention. He had work to do. Real work. Important work. 6 months after that first night at the fence, he stood in the base's expanded research center. It wasn't called that anymore. Now, it was the First Contact Research Station. Park led the xenobiology department. Hyeri headed behavioral studies. And Dae-hyun served as chief liaison officer. The Vorshai pack visited regularly. They brought their young. They taught their cubs that humans were friends. Safe. Trustworthy. A relationship built on one act of compassion was growing into something historic. Commander Vosh found Dae-hyun in the observation room, watching the pack play in the snowfields. Interspecies Command wants you to come to Station Prime, Vosh said. They're establishing formal contact protocols with other Vorshai packs across the planet. They want you to lead the initiative. What about my work here? You'll still oversee this pack. But your role is expanding. You're not just a liaison anymore, Kim. You're an ambassador. The bridge between humans and an entire species. Dae-hyun watched the cub playing with its younger siblings. It was nearly full-grown now. Strong, healthy, alive because he chose to break the rules. I never wanted to be important, he said quietly. I just wanted to help one creature. That was suffering. That's exactly why you're the right person for this, Vosh replied. You didn't help because you wanted recognition. You helped because it was right. That's the kind of human we need representing our species. 3 months later, formal contact was established, with 17 Vorshai packs across Talvis 9. The species was officially recognized as sapient. Protections were enacted, research protocols were rewritten, and at the center of it all was Dae-hyun Kim, the former janitor who saw a person where others saw an animal. The galaxy's news services called him a hero. Anthropologists called him a pioneer. Diplomats called him essential. But Dae-hyun didn't care about titles. He cared about the relationships he built, the trust he nurtured, the life he saved that saved him in return. 1 year after that first night, he stood at the fence line again. The original pack approached. The alpha, now aging but still strong. The cub, now fully grown with a mate and cubs of its own. The young ones played nearby while their mother rested. The next generation. Cubs who would grow up knowing humans as friends, who would teach their cubs the same. A legacy of trust passed down through time. The adult Vorshai that was once a starving cub approached Daehyun. It pressed its massive head against his chest, rumbled deep in its throat, a sound of contentment, of family, of home. "I know," Daehyun whispered, scratching behind its crystalline ears. "I know, friend." He looked out at the ice fields stretching endlessly under twin moons. This frozen wasteland had been his hiding place, his escape from pain and responsibility. But it became something else. It became the place where he rediscovered what it meant to be human, to see suffering and act, to offer kindness without expecting reward, to build bridges instead of walls, to choose compassion over protocol. These were human gifts, and sharing them had changed everything. Behind him, the base hummed with activity. Scientists working alongside Vorshai, humans learning alien languages, aliens learning human customs, two species growing together, all because one janitor fed one starving cub. Sometimes the smallest act of kindness can change the world. Sometimes caring when others won't can reshape the future. Sometimes being human, truly, deeply human, is the most powerful thing you can be. Daehyun smiled and walked back toward the base. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to build understanding. But tonight, he would rest knowing he had done what mattered. He had helped. He had cared. He had chosen love over fear. And the pack would remember. They would always remember.